at Go Local Live Broadcast Central in the heart of the city we love, Providence, Rhode Island. The Naked City, the city of 1,000 stories. Tonight, I think we're going to be telling about 6 or 7 stories, probably all at once. I can't remember a show where I've got more information to get into one solid 3-hour commercial-free, content-laden, outrage porn-free block than I am tonight. So let's get right down to it. CoalitionRadio.us, Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, on the mighty, mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio. Now, more than ever, at Pawtucket is home. The apolitical, all paw socks, all crony capitalists, the billionaire baseball boys club trying to erect at your personal expense their own wet Fenway dream here in the heart of Pawtucket, Rhode Island, The Bucket. Joining me live on Skype, a frequent offender here on Coalition Radio, both in our earlier primal, primitive, terrestrial phase, now here on the media again, is my good friend, former presidential candidate, political activist par excellence, all-around great guy, hoping he's got big plans in 2 years in NOLA, and even bigger plans in 2 or 3 years in, well, wherever we're doing the libertarian thing. I'm talking about Steve Kerbel. He is with StopTheShakedowns.com. Steve was on just a month or 2 ago in one of the earliest Coalition on Go Local Live shows, talking about Stop the Shakedowns. What is Stop the Shakedowns? If you missed that show, and we were going to be rebroadcasting it in tandem with the tape from tonight, a revolutionary idea, one whose simple elegance is truly profound. Taking governmental fines and giving them back to the private sector in the form of charitable contributions or victim impact funds. When we replay the original show, you'll see, and we spent a lot of time talking about the domino effect that would take place, both in how justice is weighed, both in how the execution of justice, the motivating factors behind justice in this country, and what it would do to the bloated, quote-unquote, governmental charity NGO industry here in this country. The ripple effect is astonishing. But we asked Steve to come on for the first half hour of the Coalition tonight to update us because they've made significant gains. You will be, particularly if you live in statist, big government, authoritarian central New England, you will be astonished at what you're about to hear. Steve, welcome back to the Coalition. It's great to have you on, and God bless you, lad, for what you be doing. What's happening? Give us the update.
Well, hey, Pat, it's great to be with you again, and I will tell you we have made some serious progress on this. So for those who are not familiar with this, Stop the Shakedowns is an issue committee, which is in states that offer the ability for the citizens to get together and make ballot initiatives to change laws or constitutional amendments. The issue committee is the management vehicle that we use that for. Mm-hmm. So what we have done, we have drafted a proposition, and in that proposition we have changed 23 of the Colorado statutes, all of which are related to what they do with the money once they take it from you via an enforcement entity. Mm-hmm. So what's going to happen is, when this passes, it's no longer if, it's a when now. What will happen is, if you get any type of financial penalty, be it a fine, a forfeiture, or a surcharge, or anything else from government, they're not allowed to keep the money. That money will go first through restorative justice to a victim. But you and I know, Pat, that how many victims are really out there when it comes to things like speeding tickets?
Right, right.
You know, none. So, but pretty much, let's just say, for example, 90% of this money that goes to the government now is going to go to charities. Well, interestingly enough, now that we've got, I'll tell you where we are before I tell you what I'm about. You're going to love this. But so far the process has been quite arduous. As we drafted the laws, mm-hmm. we went through several hearings at the Capitol to go back and forth as to the correct form of these laws. And then after that, once the Legislative Council had signed off on it, then we had to sit for the title board. And the title board is not an easy undertaking. You'll have a representative from the Attorney General, a representative from the Legislative Council, and a representative from the Secretary of State that all will review. In Colorado, one of the most difficult thresholds to pass for a ballot initiative to become reality is what we call single subject. So pretty much, what we had to go through is, did they agree that even though we're changing 23 statutes, is this a single subject? They unanimously said, yes, it is. And they set title on it. Our last hearing was last Wednesday. Now we're gearing up for petitioning, which will begin about a week from today. We'll have 6 months to get 98,500 valid signatures of registered voters within the state of Colorado. It's a big undertaking, but I feel confident we will do that. Mm-hmm. But what was funny is along the way, through the preparation that the state had to do, is they had to create a fiscal impact study. Oh. Now, Pat, check this out. According to the state's own information, they are planning to take $256 million from us in 2019 via the enforcement process. Now, that's a lot of money, $250 million. If 90% of that goes to charity, how many lives are going to be saved when $225 million floods to charity instead of the government? It's funny, we have one of our campaign slogans is "Feed the children, not the government."
Excellent.
Excellent. And we have a whole lot of those. I mean, we have just very talented people on this team making beautiful, beautiful marketing, advertising, things like that. But now keep in mind, $256 million they're going to take in 2019, $322 million in 2020, according to their own analysis. So what does that tell you? It tells you that they're looking at this as a serious method of revenue, and they're going to hit the gas, taking another 20% in 2020 than they did in 2019. But after this passes, I would be willing to bet those numbers are not going to be nearly that high.
Right, because ultimately, as the Goldwater Institute proved in their seminal study, there is a hand-holding relationship between local judiciary and municipal and state level governments in trying to determine what's the maximum financial impact that victimless crimes in particular can have on municipal budgets. When that ceases to exist, where will be the motivation, and quite frankly, where will be the funding to support the extraneous individuals, the bureaucracy, the collection process, all of that, to support even the collection of that. The implications are staggering. This has the potential, and folks, this isn't hype, this isn't hyperbole. This has the potential to change, quite simply, the way we conduct government here in America today. Now, I want to point out, this is the same process by which Colorado followed its first in the nation legalization of marijuana?
Yes, sir, it is.
Right. So for all of you who say this is a long shot, how could this possibly work? You know, when Steve and I first spoke on the Coalition radio show just a few months ago, we weren't even at the point of having a document per se. Now, as they say, signed, sealed, and soon to be delivered. And you have clearly a tradition in Colorado of liberty-loving individuals who can see through the smackdown, the haze that's so perpetrated upon us by ordinary everyday government in order to get there. Something clearly Rhode Islanders can learn from as we fight to not give $38 million to a bunch of billionaires for a minor league baseball stadium. So the petitioning now is this can be any resident, legal resident of Colorado who is of age. Is that the do they have to be registered to vote? What are the guidelines?
They have to be registered to vote. They have to be a registered elector, and so it's that's why pretty much, even though we need only 98,500, we're really targeting 125 to 150,000 because they will analyze these and they will throw out quite a few of them, I'm sure. Right. You know, and if somebody's not eligible, they'll find him and they'll pull him off the list. So we need to make sure that we do overkill because we need to get on the ballot. And what's been fun about this is, I would have to say that 98% of the people that I present this concept to are very happy about it. Mm-hmm. Once they understand it, once they understand that the deterrents remain, it's just canceling the conflict of interest of the same person being the judge, the jury, the executioner, and the collector. Right. And so that process, when we disrupt that process, it's going to result in more judicious law enforcement. Those of us who believe in law enforcement would like to have it to be more judicious than financially motivated. But in addition, it has, last time we talked, Pat, you mentioned that I've stolen this from you. This is like peeling back the layers of an onion. Mm-hmm. And I use this almost every time I speak on this. And here's the thing. The outer layer is judicious enforcement when you break the conflict of interest. Right. Then as you get to the inner layer, you get charities being able to fulfill their missions at a much grander scale. And how many lives is that going to save? Right. I think it's going to be a big number. Then additionally, if some people say that, well, why do people take the job of law enforcement? Well, because they want to serve their community in a lot of cases. But when their employers turn them into armed collectors for the state, mm-hmm. then not only are they not doing what they wanted to do, but also it creates that mistrust of people versus enforcement. Right. And that mistrust creates the tensions that we have today. So if there is no longer a financial motivation, if basically they're gonna pull you over because they actually think you did something wrong instead of because their boss told them to have a certain number of interactions with the public, then a lot of that tension may stand down, resulting in a more peaceful situation in the state. Right. It's better and better and better. And the only ones who hate this are, well, the people who are used to keeping the money, mm-hmm. and the people who so strongly believe in the people who keep the money that they think they're infallible. And I can tell you, Pat, that's a very small number.
Right. And let's look at the Department of Justice did a study in Ferguson, post-Ferguson riots, 2 studies actually. One, of course, the events as they occurred, but a far less publicized study was conducted on the relationship between law enforcement and the community, and whether or not that in and of itself was a precipitative event in causing the environment within which the Ferguson riots could occur. And it almost universally was concluded that this I'll call it a malicious relationship between law enforcement acting as collection agents for the state and the host community certainly created, if you will, the dry tinder necessary for the sparks that exploded across the American landscape in Ferguson, as well as many other cities. What's unique about this, this can appeal to so many different groups. If you look at your folks who are progressive in nature, they understand that the pipeline to prison is very often based on some type of, again, precipitative event, a traffic fine, a traffic stop, a tax fine, a tax levy, which begins this inevitable breakdown of the individual's life. They lose their ability to drive because of their inability to pay for a few $100s in court costs for a traffic violation. And then, of course, they lose their job. And then, of course, they lose their apartment, and so on and so forth. If you don't think it happens, then, folks, you're naive. It happens in America every day. So when you talk to a progressive, you can actually point out that this will actually give financial solace, if you will, to a community that's been far too often the target of law enforcement, particularly with regard to issues like stop and frisk. All right, so then let's take it to the libertarian art. Well, that's a slam dunk. We clearly do not believe in theft taxation in the form of penalties for victimless crimes. We believe in the legalization of most consensual adult behavior. So, that's a slam dunk. This even appeals to what's left of the conscience of a Republican, even a Trump supporter. Well, maybe not.
Well, as long as they don't love Jeff Sessions, yeah.
Right.
But when you think about it, and what I found is this crosses all party lines.
Right.
As I say, it doesn't matter what your political party is, where you come from. The vast majority of people, once they understand this, they love this, and they will support this. And so, and I'm very excited to be involved in this because I do believe this is going to spread across the country. I think it's going to create the concept that there is that conflict of interest. And nobody points it out, so they don't realize it. So all of a sudden, this becomes front and center in American politics.
Right.
And at that point, we're seeing everyone making this recognition and having the ability to make this change. I do believe that Colorado, once again, will be another pioneer towards liberty. And for common sense in this case, because of the fact that this is something that never should have happened to begin with. Mm-hmm. And if it weren't for the rampant abuse that we've seen for our lifetimes, this never would have become an issue. Mm-hmm. But it's they always say, you talk about in business, if you overdo it, that's when you lose it.
Right.
So they get greedy, and all of a sudden they lose their support system. And I'm pretty sure we would all agree they've become greedy at this point. And from a libertarian argument and taking that idea of a more peaceful society, let's just say this passes, and let's just say they decide to decriminalize drugs to the point where they become the health problem they are rather than the criminal thing that everyone seems to think they should be. And then you start to limit that number of reasons for government to interact negatively with the people. My next attack after I'm done with this is licensing. I'm coming after occupational licensing next. And so imagine, what is the government to do if they can't attack you for stupid stuff? They're actually going to have to provide the services that many people would actually prefer they provide.
Right, and you're right to point out, as I agree, that occupational licensing is actually a significant barrier to that first rung up in the economic ladder that so many folks need a hand in. We can talk about government loans and government largesse, but ultimately, if you take people, make them free, give them skills, allow them to, engage in commerce with their own sweat equity and maybe whatever risk capital they can pull together, that's how you take someone, you teach them how to fish, you make them proud to be a citizen, they engage in the community, they engage in commerce, and by doing so, they engage in what I call true capitalism, true free market capitalism. Anyone who's listening to this show knows that I believe that capitalism is the mechanism by which the individual can actually fully utilize their talents and then in a reciprocal manner support and engage with others so that society realizes the fruits of their hard work and also realizes the fruits of their innovation. And it happens over and over again. We talk about the multiplier effect. So again, why I'm so excited about this and why we're going to walk with Steve every step of the way, because this is spreading, this is viral, and this has the potential even to make it through here to statist New England, authoritarian New England. And imagine the look on that commissioner's eyes, that tax collector. One can argue that we become a feudal society here where we all pay homage to the state on a daily basis. This changes everything. Now, by what mechanism do they, in the state of Colorado, determine and dictate how many signatures you need for this to get onto the ballot?
It's a percentage of voters that voted in previous elections.
Right.
So the one that I don't remember what that percentage is. I think it's 5%. Basically, that's as long as we can get that number, we're on the ballot. And that number has been climbing over the years as the Colorado continues to grow. But still, under 100,000, it's a big job, but it's not an insurmountable job.
Right. And I can't imagine now, again, let's point out, though, the difference between Colorado and, say, Massachusetts, our neighbor to the north. Astonishingly enough, a couple of years ago, the good people of Massachusetts had the opportunity to vote out the sales tax. Now, the big government crowd countered with the wouldn't be prudent argument. It's risky. What could happen? Well, as libertarians like to say, you can elect and appoint people who are liberty-minded to high positions of power, so we could then leave you alone. And that could have happened. So God bless Colorado. Thank God for Colorado, because they've demonstrated beyond any shred of a doubt that marijuana, cannabis, can be legal, can be consumed by adults, can work to eliminate a dangerous black market, and be economically beneficial to an entire segment of society. You folks are going to be successful at this. I know this in my heart of hearts, because Coloradans don't put up with the kind of madness. By the way, the funny thing about the Northeast is we all think in the Northeast we're the tough guys, particularly in my good friend Larry Sharp's state of New York. I can't think of an area in the country which submits more on a daily basis to big government. The dichotomy is astonishing. And New York is a perfect example of that. Yeah, you're a big, tough New Yorker right after you pay $30 for a pack of smokes and you pay about a 25% sales tax or something like that. So God bless Colorado. Now, this all costs a lot of money, because you're right to say that, and I'll use my terminology, the state of Colorado, if you will, the government, the bureaucracy, must state, has absolutely no interest whatsoever in this passing, do they?
Well, I hate to put words in her mouth, and I have to be somewhat complimentary, that the folks that I've dealt with so far have been very professional. And even though you might be able to see behind their eyes that they probably hate this, they've been very, very professional. They've done their job the way they were supposed to. My hat's off to them. I'm very, very impressed. So I would have to be putting words in their mouth to say they hate it, but looking behind their eyes, either they think I'm a complete nut or they hate it. But most people, when they first hear this, they have a kind of a reaction like, what? This is something I've never thought of before.
Right.
But then when it kind of goes into them, then they realize, oh my gosh, this does make a lot of sense. And I do think that even the folks at the level of government, because they themselves don't get to spend the money either. And I would imagine that the people who are doing the work day in and day out have probably gotten some tickets that they thought were financially motivated as well. So I would not even predict that government folks are necessarily against this unless they're the ones who direct the budgets and get to decide where this money goes. So it's really, really interesting.
The universality of the appeal of this is astonishing, because you're right to point out that it cuts across everyone. Everyone at some point has paid a ticket, a fine, a late fee. Question, library cards. Are they part of this too, or are libraries exempt from this?
I would imagine they're probably exempt, but it's funny because the way we had to craft this is, because like I say, there's 23 statutes that are affected. And I had to create one which kind of was the blanket statute that applied to the whole state. And so, there may be some jurisdictions that try and find a way out. We do have something in Colorado called home rule, where, cities can ignore a certain number of state laws and do their own thing. But the way we crafted this was to make it so, okay, I'll give you an example. Any city over 2,000 people in the state of Colorado is eligible to opt out into what they call home rule and basically follow their own rules, which is kind of a neat idea. It's not something a libertarian would necessarily dislike. But the way they've done it is they've crafted that amendment, the constitutional amendment, to say that any municipality that opts out and chooses home rule has the ability to make ordinances, to enforce those ordinances, and to collect on those ordinances. So several people were actually under the impression that some of the cities would get out of this. But the way we crafted the law was, okay, that's fine. Make your ordinances, enforce those ordinances, and collect on those ordinances, but there's nothing in the law that says you can keep it once you've collected it.
Right. And that's the fascinating part, because ultimately you're not challenging any of the individual underlying laws as far as whether there's a degree of criminality or not. You're simply saying that the state will not benefit from fines collected from them, and neither
will the cities if I have anything to do with it. And so it's something where all we're saying is you can't have the money. You do whatever you want, but you can't have the money. And so that way, I'm not saying, yes, I picked on a couple of small towns that really abuse this badly, but I'm not going to do that today. But what I will say is that all we're doing is changing the concept. And that concept is you can't have the money, and therefore, without the corruption of money, you are therefore more honest than you were if you could keep the money.
Right.
And we're just leaving it at that.
So, only got a minute or two left, but the next step, all right, so you've been given, in a sense, I'll use the term legal standing for your ballot initiative to go forward. All right. So now you've got to raise the petitions for to get that physically onto the ballot. When does the period begin? When does the period end? And how can folks from around the country who might hear this donate money? And where can they reach you? And where can they read more about it?
Well, thank you for asking about that, Pat. First of all, we will have 6 months to get these signatures. And unless there are any challenges that hit us in the next few days, and which is always possible, but I don't necessarily see that coming, then the petitioning period, the 6 months begins next Friday. And so there's always a way to interact with us. The website is www.stoptheshakedowns.com. Once again, stoptheshakedowns.com. If you're in Colorado and you have the ability to sign up as a volunteer to circulate petitions, you can do that through the website. If you're not in Colorado and you want to help the cause, you can still go to the website, stoptheshakedowns.com, and donate. We anticipate that we're getting as many volunteers as we can, but this is still going to be, it's a big job. So this may cost $300,000-$400,000 in addition to the volunteers to get this done. So if you like this idea, I ask that you visit the website and donate what you can, because this is not just going to affect Colorado. Because if Colorado is the pioneer in this and gets this done, this may come to your state as well.
Right.
So everyone in the United States has a vested interest in what we're doing here right now.
Right.
And because we can benefit the entire country if we get this passed. So if you can give, if you like what we're doing, please give what you can. We really need all the help we can get.
Absolutely, and I'll just add to that, because Steve Kerbel is joining us. Of course, he was a presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party in the 2016 elections. My words, not yours, because Steve's a nice guy, and as Tony can attest, I'm not. If you've ever felt peeved, if you will, verklempt about an outrageous court cost you paid in order to go to court to fight against a ticket, or a civil penalty you had to pay that was clearly malicious in nature. If that's ever happened to you, and it's happened to everybody, right? Here's your opportunity. A few bucks, stoptheshakedown.com, a few bucks across the nation, and literally, we've got a revolution, don't we, Steve?
We do, and we're teaching the people, we're teaching the government that the people still have power, and we're teaching the people that the people still have power as well.
Absolutely. So, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and please keep us apprised of what's going down. Steve Kerbel, stoptheshakedowns.com, changing the way that we interact with government, changing everything. Best of luck, and you know our heart's with you, and I'm going to do my best to make sure our wallets are with you as well. All right, my friend?
Thanks again, Pat. I sure appreciate it.
Steve Kerbel joining us from Colorado. Stoptheshakedowns.com.